Good morning, everybody. How are you? Awesome. What was that? Well, there was some interesting stuff going on. How are you? Great, beautiful, fabulous, wonderful. All right. I like it. Happy. Yeah. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. And I know that this has been a very beautiful time of year for me, but I also know that it's been a very challenging time of year. And it's just every week I've kind of brought that up because there's been so much going on in the universe. There's so much stirring that's happening. But what I truly believe is that our planet, our consciousness, our humanity is going through a great transition at this time. And I think that great transition is an evolution. And each and every one of us are evolving to that next highest and greatest version of ourselves. But as the butterfly has to, as the caterpillar has to fall apart and kind of get a little messy, I think that's what's going on right now. Things are a little messy. And it's okay to be messy right now. I just want to put that out there. It doesn't mean that we're not transforming into that next level of our greatest expression. So I really love today. I do always say it's the best day ever, but that's because it just keeps getting better for me. The best day ever means that it's better than it was before because it's the only moment I have right now. It's the one that I'm alive in. So, best moment ever. This is the best Sunday ever. And you all came to join me in it. You're the best people ever. Feeling good now? Well, you walked into this center. This center is a healing center. This center is a revealing center. And what it does is whenever you walk into those doors, it's like you walk into a bubble of love. I don't know if you felt it, but we've created much intentionality around that. We've had prayers, several years of prayers, of imagining every single person that walks through those doors, that they feel the presence of love. Not only that they feel the presence of love, but that their body is healed. Their body is shifted and changed because of being in this presence. And I love that because we know how God works. We know the nature of life. Some people don't call it God. Some people call it the universe or spirit or the beloved one or the quantum field. I really don't care what you call it. And it doesn't really care what you call it either. But there is one thing about God, and I use God because I'm not talking about the big man in the sky who's like Santa Claus and decides if you're naughty or nice. That's not God to me. God is an ever-presence of love, an evolving expression of love that loves itself so much that it chose to show up as you and I. And we get to be the experiential of God. But it's not just us. It's the chair, it's the air we breathe, it's the flowers and the trees. It's everywhere, expressing itself in and through all things. Now, the weird thing about God is it's a seeming paradox. They see this in the Bible. They say God is the Alpha and the Omega, right? The seen and the unseen. I also describe it as the infinite. So God is infinite, right? Because God is all there is. It's everything. Everything is God everywhere, and it doesn't end. And yet it's finite, because I'm finite, but yet I'm still part of the infinite. So it's a paradox. The Alpha, the Omega, the infinite, and the finite. And the personal and the impersonal. So the aspect of God that is the personal is love. So whenever you feel love, you're feeling the personal aspect of God. But then there's the impersonal aspect. And when we talk about the impersonal aspect of God, we call it, here in the Science of Mind community, we call it the law. Now, I don't mean the law as in God is going to judge you. I mean the law as it works the same for everybody. So it doesn't matter if you're in jail. It doesn't matter if you're in a war. It doesn't matter if you're homeless. God is ever present and ever loving to every single person equally, and giving of itself to every person equally. And so it's kind of confusing because I say, well, God is impersonal and God is the law. And I also like to describe the law as in, like, we have laws, we have traffic laws, for instance. So the red light, it doesn't matter who it is who runs a red light. If a policeman's there, you run a red light, you get a ticket because it's the law. The law is that you're not supposed to run a red light. That's the law. Doesn't matter who runs the red light, you get a ticket, right? And so that's kind of how God works, except God works according to our belief, according to our consciousness, according to our thoughts and intentions. So as I implant my thoughts, my intentions, my prayers into the universe, God responds to it, to me. Like I'm planting every single thought and word and an intention that I have, every single prayer that I have causes God to go into action on my behalf. And it conspires for my greatest good. Now, sometimes I might be conspiring for my not so greatest good. And whenever I am putting out those intentionalities that's maybe not so good, maybe I'm looking in the mirror and I'm saying some nasty things about my body and how bad I feel about myself, then the law of God is going to go into action and give me evidence of my own belief system. So give me evidence of what I am looking for out there, or I'm speaking to myself, or I'm talking to people about. It will give me more and more evidence. So I have the opportunity to choose the way I am directing. I would say it's kind of like a force. It's like a, Mary Morrissey says it's kind of like a concrete pourer that's always pouring concrete. Right? It's always pouring concrete, and you can be pouring it into whatever you want, right? You can pour it into something magnificent, or if you're like, this is crap, then the concrete goes into the this is crap area, and you get to see the solidified version of that. But it also could be, this is magnificent, my life is great, this is the best day ever. And then you start witnessing evidence of God working on your behalf. So we all have choices on how we're going to experience the universe and how we experience God. In the Science of Mind textbook, it says, the great love of the universe must be one with the great law of its own being, and we approach love through this law. This then is the teaching, love and law. As the love of God is perfect, and so the law of God is also perfect. We must understand both. So we're not separate from God or life around us. There's something in us that knows that these words that I'm speaking are the truth. There's something in you that knows that you actually have divine authority in your own life. That you're not a victim of your own life, a victim of your own circumstances. Now, that's fun for me to say, except I know there's people in this room who've experienced rape, discrimination. They've had terrible things happen to them. So how can I say that God is love, and then these things happen? And then there's those people that are in other, not in this community, but other communities who say, well, what were you thinking to cause that to happen? Now, that is not the nature of God. The nature of God is always evolving us into the highest and greatest version of ourselves. So the question is, when we've experienced those things, those very traumatic things, who did we choose to be as a result of them? How did we choose to step into the fullness of our being as a result of those experiences? And are we letting those experiences victimize us, or are we letting those experiences empower us? Now, that doesn't mean that if you've had one of those experiences, you're not going to experience grief. And you know the stages of grief are anger, right? Denial, resentment, all of those different stages. That means that you will experience the humanity of the situation. But after you've processed that, it gives you an opportunity to look at, who am I choosing to be as a result of this experience? And am I going to be empowered by this or not? There's so much that we can change as we change our minds, as we change our thoughts. So I would encourage you to speak and as if that you are evolving into that higher and greater person. But a lot of people don't even think about, well, who do I want to be? What do I want to be? How do I want to be? Who's the person I want to be in this world? What's the highest and greatest version of myself that I want to express into the world? And maybe you have thought about that. But I want to encourage you to act as if you already are that highest and greatest version. I do love this book, and if you want me to order you this book, I will have it by next week, I promise. Just let me know after service, and I will order it for you. The You Are the Placebo by Joe Dispenza. It's really interesting. He's got so many amazing scientific studies about how what we do in our minds creates our reality. One of the studies was done in 1981. There was a group of men who were in their 70s and 80s, and they took part in a 5-day retreat. What they were asked to do is pretend that they were 22 years younger than they were currently at the time. So the retreat was headed by Harvard psychologist Dr. Ellen Langer, and she also had a control group. So there are 8 men. And then they had another control group that went to this retreat center, 8 men, the following week. The first men were asked to actively pretend they were 22 years younger. The control group were asked to reminisce about 22 years younger, but don't pretend that they're 22 years younger. So the first group of the retreat center, they found themselves surrounded by all kinds of environmental cues that would help them out, like old issues of Life magazine and the Saturday Evening Post. They also had movies and TV shows that were popular in 1959, and they listened to recordings of Perry Como, Nat King Cole, and they had all of these elements so they could just be and act as if they were back in that era, back in that time period. So the next group just talked about it, and they just imagined things, but they didn't act as if they were 22 years younger. So after the 5-day retreat, the researchers took several measurements, and they compared them to the measurements they had taken of the same men just before they had gone on the retreat. Interestingly enough, the bodies of both groups of men were physiologically younger, structurally as well as functionally. Even though the ones in the first study group who pretended they were younger, they improved significantly more than the people in the control group who just reminisced. They discovered, get this, improvements in height, weight, and gait. The men grew taller as their posture straightened, and their joints became more flexible as their fingers lengthened and their arthritis diminished. Their eyesight and hearing got better, their grip strength improved, their memory sharpened, and they scored better on tests of mental cognition. The first group improved by 63%, and the control group improved by 44%. So the men literally became younger in those 5 days. So what happened? Right? What happened? They started acting as if they were that age. Now, what if we start acting as if we're whatever we want to be? If you want to be, let's say, an author, what would an author be doing? If you want to be a powerful speaker, what would a powerful speaker be doing? What are those things that you want to be? And why don't you start acting as if you are that? I'm losing my balls. It'd be like, my minister, she lost her balls in church on Sunday. No, I don't. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, whew. So I ask you those questions because I know that as we're working with the law, right? The law is these men were acting as if, and they had put intentionality out there of being a specific age. And I know that each and every person that was in that study group, they were using their mind to implant the universe of what they wanted to create. Now, what else can you be creating in your life? What could you be doing with your mind to start creating things for yourself? So once you know that there's a law, you can just start utilizing it. Utilize the law for yourself. Ernest Holmes said, "Now we can forget all about the law and know that there's nothing but the word. The law will be working automatically. We must forget everything else and let our word be spoken with a deep inner realization of love, beauty, peace, poise, power, and the great presence of life that at the point of our own consciousness." So as we speak our word, as I speak about this being a healing center, I have already put into motion that everybody in this room is being healed. Now, I don't know if it's a mental healing or an emotional healing or a physical healing, but as I speak that into this room, each and every person has been affected by my words because I've planted the soil. But then what kind of words have you been planting in your life with other people? What kind of words have you been using? How are you going to use this power, this force you have for good in the universe? Or have you been using it to damage and harm other people or maybe even yourself? You know, they say that God's name is I am. I am. I am that I am, right? It says it in the Bible, I am that I am. Well, what are you saying I am? I am beautiful. I am powerful. I am a magnificent person of love in this world. Or are you saying things like, I am damaged. I'm not worthy. I'm stupid. I'm not worth it. Whatever you're doing, you're creating that in your life. And you're creating that affirmation about God, about the divine. When they talk about blasphemy, that's what they're talking about. You're speaking your truth against your own self because you're divine. It's not what you say. It's what your intention is behind everything. But we are so caught up in this paradigm of the world. And we get into these habits and these behaviors of being that oftentimes are not supportive for our greatest good. They had another study, and I really like this study. It was about priming the pump. Now, basically, priming the pump is when someone, someplace, or something in our environment, for an example, taking a test, triggers all sorts of associations that are already wired into our brain. And then it causes us to act in a certain ways without being conscious of what we're doing. So, you know, a pump, priming the pump, you actually have to pull the water up to the pump. So there's already water in the pumping system. So that way, as soon as you're ready to use the pump, it comes out. So you prime the pump first before the water comes out. And that's how it works. Well, they did more tests, and they had one of these tests where they had really smart kids. And they all got very similar smart SAT scores. But before they went in to go take their tests, they told both men and women, they said, well, the men always score higher on this type of test. And so they tell both the men and women. Now, they take the test, and the men scored higher on the test than the women did. They did the same thing with white people and black people. And they told the black people, oh, the white people always score better on this test. And when they take the test, they actually scored better on the test. Now, the control groups, who had the same mixture of people, they performed equally as well. But they had primed the pump. They had told these groups of people how they would perform before they performed. Now, we do that every day with each other. Now, what if you primed the pump for good in your life? What if you started telling people how amazing they are and how deserving they are? And then when they go into a situation, they start being amazing. They start recognizing that they're deserving. See, we don't have to prime the pump for the things that are what's wrong in the world. We need to prime the pump for what we want to create in this world. We want to prime the pump for creating the world that we're imagining. This theme this year, we've been talking about creating a world that works for everyone. Well, what does that look like? What is that like? For me, that means that each and every person is seen and valued and heard. That everybody who is going through any kind of grief or trauma situation, that they are experienced as loving individuals and they are allowed to process through what's going on in their life. And that I forgive people. Because I know that people don't always act from their highest and greatest good, but I can choose to act from my highest and greatest good by letting things go. By releasing things in situations. We had this movie this last Friday. It was called Miracles from Heaven. And it's a beautiful story because this is a true story about a woman named Christy. And she had a young daughter who had an incurable disease where her stomach wouldn't process food at all. And she was dying. All the kids who've had this disease, they die from it. Amazingly enough, the girl is climbing a tree. She actually falls, it's a dead tree, and she falls inside the tree, down the tree, hits her head, knocks her unconscious, and when they finally pull her out of this hollow tree, and she goes back to the doctor, she's cured from this disease. And it's a miracle. Now, we can't describe miracles. Right? We can't describe, it doesn't make sense to science, but it does make sense to God. It makes sense to our lives because miracles happen every day. And the beauty of this story is that was the end focus. It actually wasn't the end focus about the child who received this miracle, but it was about the mother who realized that through this entire process of healing, there were little miracles that happened every single day. And she wasn't paying attention to them. For instance, she was in the hospital and she had to fly to Boston because that's where the specialist was. And her daughter was dying, like getting really close to the end. And the dad and the other two girls, her other two children, they needed to fly and go to Boston. But the guy was at the counter, at the ticket counter, and he was using all his credit cards. He had maxed out all his credit cards on hospital bills. And he tried his very last credit card to see if he could go see his dying child. And the guy at the counter heard one of the daughters say, "Are we going to make it by the time before my sister dies?" And he ended up purchasing their tickets for them. And that was a little everyday miracle that happened. Another miracle that happened was that when they first found out about this condition, in the middle of the night, they needed to rush her to the hospital, and a friend was able to come at like 2 o'clock in the morning and babysit their other children. So those little things happen every day, but sometimes we don't recognize that those are miracles. But miracles are God in action. Miracles are you and me being in alignment with love. Anytime you're in alignment with love, you're creating a miracle in this world. So I want to encourage you to do 3 things. I want to encourage you to speak as if you are what you really want to be. I want you to prime the pump, not only for yourself, but for everybody around you. And the 3rd thing I'd like you to do is recognize that miracles happen every day. I'd like you to find them in your everyday life and see where they're happening. Tune in to what's going on. Be aware, be present. And I want you to find at least one miracle that you notice that has happened this week. And I bet you'll probably find a little bit more. Are you willing to participate in that experiment with me this week? Yes. All right, good. Well, let's do this and let's have a great week and declare that it is indeed the best week ever. And so it is. Let's pray. I'm so grateful to know that I'm here in a community of people who have high consciousness and great intentionality. I know and claim that each and every person in this room is awakened to that divine spark within them, that there is an ever-presence of God, of the beloved one, of the source that is feeding each and every one of us in every aspect of our being. It's allowing each and every one of us to awaken to a deeper sense of wellness, a deeper sense of wholeness, a deeper sense of well-being, and a deeper sense of connectivity to the whole planet. I'm so grateful to know that as I speak my words, that I speak the words of love and light, that I choose words that are of wisdom, that are in support and empowering others around me. As I know this for myself, I know that each and every person is here awakened to the power and the presence of their words. I'm so grateful to know that there is something that is working in each and every one of us that is allowing us to open up to spaciousness, allowing us to open up to the harmony, to the miracles that are happening every day in our life. I'm so grateful to know that this week I absolutely see them to a greater degree than I've ever seen them ever in my entire life. As I know this for myself, I know each and every person is also awakened to that divine spark of miracles happening everywhere. The presence of love is everywhere. And so as I surrender into that idea, I am so grateful. I'm so grateful to see it, to feel it, to witness it, and to allow it be my life unfolding right here and now. As I declare this truth, I know it is already done. So I let this prayer go, I let it be, I sit back, I relax, and I watch the fireworks of miracles happen everywhere. It is indeed beautiful. Thank you, life. And so it is. So it is. Namaste.